Hello, people. You have 3 royals today. And no, we're not talking about Meghan and Harry.
And baby makes 3.
And baby makes 3. But I guess I would be the baby on that formula. I don't know. I don't know which one of you would be Meghan. Probably Mike, I'm thinking. But I don't know. She makes a lot of trouble, and both of these guys make a lot of trouble. So I don't know. But they're both crazy talented. But we did want to announce this is actually big news. Not the whole public domain thing, but Bill getting a piece of land in where is it? Scotland?
In Scotland somewhere. I have a map to it, but I don't really know where it is.
Well, it's only, what is it, a foot or 5 feet or something?
1 square foot. My noble estate is 1 square foot of land. But that makes me apparently and I hope he got rich off this, some enterprising actual Scottish laird decided, let's subdivide it because you can, as long as you have part of an estate, you're a laird. Let's make some money off that. And has, I hope he's filthy with it.
Yeah, definitely. Mike, do you want to introduce him, or you think he's known?
Well, at this point, Bill needs no introduction, but I've known Bill a long time. We haven't been in contact this whole time, but Bill actually illustrated a Clone Zone story for me for Nexus about 35 years ago. And I miss Bill's art because you have a unique style, instantly identifiable and very reader friendly. But then, of course, I've been aware of Fables all this time, and Bill's made a huge splash recently by declaring all his Fables books in the public domain because he was having a dispute with DC. And having worked for DC for many years, I know that they have a very aggressive legal department.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And very slippery, I guess, is one word I would use to describe it, which is they will agree to things, and then when the paperwork comes, the actual written version is quite different. So I finally decided to go another way rather than the years of back and forth. Like, okay, we agree to this, then the paperwork comes in and says, well, it doesn't quite say what we agreed to, does it? So when this does.
So what is there any new recent news or updates, or pretty much the same? I mean, you wanting to do it and them not wanting you to, and threatening legal action, I guess.
Well, no. I mean, they threatened legal action against anyone else out there.
Anyone else, okay.
Who takes me seriously. And I think slipped up a bit and said out loud what I knew they believed all along, but they couldn't say, which is, we own.
Yeah.
Own this. We own, which they don't. So I think their rush statement to staunch the bleeding that happened right after my announcement, they didn't quite think it through as carefully as they should have. But they haven't contacted me at all since then. Radio silence entirely.
Yeah, that sounds pretty typical. Yeah, I didn't even know if it was one of those. It seems like a lot of times when they make those quick responses, it's almost like them the lawyers trying to justify them being kept on retainer or whatever for the companies to kind of prove that they have a reason for having a job or why they do stuff. But like you said, not really thinking through, just responding really fast. And
well, it's a lawyer's job to immediately revert to worst case scenario.
yeah,
And that's why people get involved in so many legal battles,
Yeah.
because lawyers are unreasonable when it comes to protecting their clients. They're hired guns,
right.
and
Yes.
they themselves have no interest in compromise. They have an interest in defending their client against the worst case scenario, or the smallest incursion whatsoever. Whatever it is, that's their job, and they feel that their reputation hangs on it. And in some cases, I imagine it does, but it's really not helpful in the creative arts.
Yeah.
Well, I think if DC's phalanx of lawyers wanted to really prove their worth, the way to do that would be, well, from time to time, read the contracts that they have with providers. When this latest round of fables was being talked about in a legal sense, one of the many lawyers they had on a phone call with me insisted that it would have to be done work for hire. And we, after some back and forth, found out, she thought that DC actually owned Fables. And when I called them on it, her excuse for preparing for this big negotiation was, I didn't read your contract. That was why I didn't know. So maybe
Wow.
do that. But don't really like to read. The battle is more fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be a pretty sick human being to find legal battle fun.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if the gavel fits.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get into it for the adrenaline rush, the combat in ways other than actual combat. Sort of like a roller coaster. You get the thrill of thinking you're about to die when you're done.
Right. Yeah. You said in I don't know, one of your interviews or something, you had said that you were rethinking and I think you were saying this in general about public domain and copyrights and things like that. Like that your feelings on those things had kind of changed over the years.
Yes.
Were you thinking, and you were meaning that in general, right? Like not just dealing with fables? I mean, I don't know.
In general, that all in the creative community can agree that the copyright and trademark and public domain laws are a mess, and they've been fiddled with. Are you there? Am I there?
Yeah.
They've been fiddled with to the benefit of big corporations. The extensions for Mickey Mouse and this and that.
Right.
What we agree, if we agree on that all of this needs reforming, I don't think we agree on the specifics.
Is he freezing up for you too?
Gone a pretty radical out here that said a very short period of ownership for the creator. I expect that to be the first piece of an ongoing conversation. I don't expect it to end up there. And even though we joked about it before the show began, I will not just willy-nilly declare things that I don't actually own public domain just to just to sow chaos and merry pranksterism.
Right.
But I think it would be good to change it. The problem I ran into, of course, is people, for example, the lovely care for the planet people that say, well, in order to save the planet, this many people should die right now. But they do not volunteer to be the first to and
right.
I'm first to the death march.
Yeah.
I figured if I'm going to propose something like this, I should put my money, or in this case, my intellectual properties, where my mouth is, and do what I claim to want to have done.
Which would be what? Publish your own version of Fables?
Publish your own version of Fables. Why not? I mean, I got most of it from the public domain, so it seems natural that it should go back there.
Right.
I fooled around with different timing for this. I thought, maybe in my will when I die. But that just seems a little self-serving. I got everything I could out of this.
Right.
Now I'm going to do this nice, wonderful, generous thing. It's like, you're going to do it. So that was part of it. The philosophy. This radical philosophy grew in stages. My first encounter with it was with Cerebus, where Dave Sim and Gerhard did a creative split, which was not about public domain, but it was about the way you do shared ownership. Is that rather than you have to both get together and decide on everything together, why not each of you has 100% of the ownership? Right. So Dave can, do his Cerebus up without Gerhard if he wants. This is following the 300 issues. Gerhard can exploit Cerebus if he wants, and has an open door to do so, including, and I spoke to Dave several times about this. Dave never wanted to exploit it by doing, an animated show or toys or et cetera, et cetera. But Gerhard, by all means, if you want to do that, you have every right. So that was my first exposure to that. Oh, okay, that's a completely different way of looking at it. That we all own all of everything.
I have a similar relationship with Steve Rude.
We were before you sauntered in, with your la-di-da timing. We were discussing just that Nexus is done the same way. It was, and then shortly after that, shortly in comic book years anyway, Dave announced that he sort of gives anyone permission to do Cerebus, because not that he's calling it public domain, but it's like, no, go ahead and do it, because I have every confidence that you will not be competing with me, that my Cerebus will still do better than yours. So knock yourself out. And one of his reasons was that he had a pretty radical view of fair use and would grab up all sorts of other people's characters to do cameos and more in Cerebus, and said, turnabout is fair play.
Bill, Disney's about to drop a
little cockiness, like, use it if you want, but mine will be better. I'm sorry, what?
Disney is about to drop a Snow White movie, Disney, of course, owns Marvel, and you have used Snow White in your Fable series, which is DC.
Yes.
It raises the question: does DC have any interest in Disney's Snow White? He's got that stare down.
Yeah. Well, it is freezing.
Oh, I don't know. Disney's Snow White is going to be different from my Snow White, I hope.
It's going to be different from anything we've ever known.
Yeah, and everything else. So, Fables did okay. It found a good readership, regardless of the fact that there were a million different versions of, including before I did the Fables as public domain thing. I mean, there were plenty. I said, well, let's do fairy tale characters, and let's have sexy Snow White, and let's have mean Snow White, and what have you, and that's just fine.
Yeah, I think that I like a lot of that stuff too. And I like people's seeing their unique takes on things, and there's different elements that you can play off of that are in the different stories, which in some ways can help put a spotlight on certain things or help people re-enjoy those stories in new ways. I had written which was one of my more popular short stories that I've done on Amazon, but I did a thing that was basically just on the fact of that there are so many times in Bram Stoker's Dracula where they mention the communion elements, that I was like, well, I'm going to do a story that about like a priest friend of his that is the one that gives him those elements. And it's just kind of like a side story to the main story. But the cool thing is, like, aside from the fact that a lot of people liked it, a lot of people started getting into like Dracula and checking out Dracula that had never actually read Dracula. And I think those things are cool too, when they, just like when they can read stuff that you've done with Fables and different things, and then go back to some of the source materials or read some of the Brothers Grimm stuff or whatever. It's I don't know. It's a cool. It can be, unless you're just trying to mess everything up like some people do. It can be a cool way of honoring those things.
Oh yeah, I love recycled characters in the public domain. Look at Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
He's probably the most popular literary creation of all time.
Yeah. Right. And I just recently learned that there's a Sherlock Holmes estate that does not every single Sherlock Holmes story has entered the public domain.
Yeah.
And their complaint is, you did this original Sherlock Holmes story. The stories are in the public domain, but it's too similar to the character of Sherlock Holmes and the stories that aren't. Therefore,
well, that character must remain consistent.
Pretty darn silly. Yeah.
Its consistency is part of his appeal. That's why people like him, because he has a very particular personality. And they can't get enough of that personality. And that's why the character endures.
Yeah. Except for when you spoof him and show Sherlock as an idiot.
Yeah.
And
where does that happen?
All along. That was in a movie called Without a Clue, where Michael Caine plays a completely befuddled Sherlock, and the actual intelligence behind the duo.
Huh.
And then
Right.
and then there's the Gene Wilder spoof, Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, which I thought was like Wilder and Mel Brooks went their separate ways to do their own kind of over the top farcical comedy. Gene Wilder did this, but that had a kind of a not a bumbling Sherlock Holmes, but a bumbling so-called smarter brother.
So, Bill, what are in the shelves behind you? Did you steal that from a library, or is that where you keep your notes? Yeah.
No, I did the lazy modern version of just getting these shelves. I think they're apothecary shelves, for storing drugs, but for anything. And in my, everybody's art studio, people that do art, is cluttered with all sorts of crap.
Yeah.
And mine would be a minefield if I didn't keep it organized. Yes. So I have little drawers for everything. I have, drawers for tape and drawers for scissors and pens, certain kinds of pens and pencils, et cetera, et cetera. Erasers get their whole drawer. And if I didn't do that, I would never be able to find anything. Half of the time I spend drawing, even as organized as this is, half of the time I spend drawing earthly language when I'm not able to find the pencil or eraser I need, or lettering guide, or what have you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think you're beeping yourself out when you're saying those words.
Yeah.
He's polite that way.
Yeah, very polite. Bill, are you drawing? Are you drawing these days?
I do draw. As a matter of fact, since you asked, I have just recently, everyone who draws publishes their sketchbooks and stuff. I finally decided to do it. I'm going to hold it up here and see. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Let me.
Story fragments. I decided, just because I get asked so often,
there we go.
Bill, why don't you draw anymore? And I do. Not everything I do makes it to publication. So here's a bunch of stuff that I'm either working on, works in progress, or things that, I got started on something and lost my momentum. But I do draw. I do draw fairly constantly, just not often in ways that get published anymore.
Do you have any interest in doing continuity?
Now, in a general sense, for comics, yes.
Yeah.
Does continuity, the Neal Adams Studio, still exist?
No, I meant, are you interested in illustrating a comic book story?
Yeah. I would. It's going to be a while before I can commit to one. I just signed a deal for a pretty hefty novel for a publisher that will remain nameless until they decide to make the announcement. But so that's most of what I'm doing now, plus a few comic scripts here and there. And one of the benefits that was unsought for this public domain thing is it brought in a lot of offers to do.
Yeah.
I've had more offers in my career now that I'm supposed. I keep trying to convince myself that I'm kind of retired, or at least semi-retired now. But maybe I should try and convince others that I. But so I'm fairly busy. But that said, yes, the idea of doing continuity in comics form is still wide open to me. I do it for myself with things. I get an idea, I start drawing it. When I get the idea, I don't give myself a solid deadline, and that usually is what causes it to peter out. I need the deadline. I need someone on the phone that I'm avoiding talking to that is going to remind me that I really should think about getting some of that stuff done.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you could get one of those like dog shock collars or something. Just give it.
Yeah, you know,
He's like, who do I give it to? Who do I give the controls
you
to?
kids with your newfangled kinky way. I can't learn those lifestyles now. I'm too old.
What was I gonna?
Are you writing novels?
Yeah. A few I put on, the Amazon, but this one I'm currently is for a pretty major publication.
I know, and a lot of people I know have tended to think of you as more of a writer now because of Fables and other things.
Yes.
But you've been drawing for a long time, and like Mike said, your style is pretty recognizable. Has your style changed at all? Your art style?
God, I hope so.
I mean, I know we're always supposed to be trying to get better and be better at shadows and everything else, but yeah, I was just wondering if like the way that you approach things is different, or.
Yeah, well, for one thing, there are published things out there. Some of my first comics work was in a comic book called Warp for First Comics, just at the time that Nexus was making the change from Capital over to First Comics. And I was doing a regular backup in Warp, and some of those deadlines they literally look like the final page was drawn in the car speeding to the airport to get the very last FedEx back when you couldn't electronically transfer pages. And the reason it looks like that is that the final page was drawn in a car. I wasn't driving. Luckily, I had a friend driving, speeding through Houston while I drew on a lap board to rush this package out onto the tarmac to hand to the pilot. So my style has changed in the sense that, dear God, Bill, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I can't. I'm physically unable. The pull an all-nighter
Right.
nonsense. I can't do that anymore. So, as a result, things that I do draw get sent out when they are sent out, when they're ready.
We will serve no picture before it's time.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, because of that, I can't blame the mistakes in every single panel of every single page on anything but my own drawing ability, and not on outside circumstances. There were fun moments. There's an Elementals cover, a wraparound, big wraparound cover that I was so deadline crunched on that I was eating my lunch with one hand while I was drawing with the other, and spilled an entire bowl of chili across. I knew
that was coming.
Diagonally, so that I got both sides of the cover, and I didn't have time to start again, and still make the last possible moment when someone was coming to pick it up, or I don't get paid, or what have you. And So when it dried, I scraped all the beans and crap off, but when it dried, this brown mess, I could barely see the pencil lines and some of the ink lines below the brown mess. So I saved that cover got published because I had whiteout in one hand and an inking brush in the other. And I would just white out a small area and ink it real quick, and then go to another one and ink it real quick. Much the way Renaissance frescoes were done. Whereas fresco paintings for murals and stuff, you couldn't carry over the plaster you put up to be illustrated. You had to put just enough for what you could finish that day because it wouldn't carry over to the next day. That was me. I was Mr. Instant Fresco, just putting something down, drawing it, putting something down, drawing it. That was I forget the issue number. I think it was 10 of the second series, but the one where my version of Rhyming Thor was on the cover. If you saw the original, if you turned it on its side, you could see the mountain ranges of dried whiteout that it actually was. But it reproduced not bad. Nice. I try not to do that anymore. No more eating on the art table. Taking a break sometimes, and I've got all this back.
Fortunately, us writers can eat while we're writing, unless the food falls on the keyboard.
Yeah,
it gets down in there. I'm on my fourth keyboard, but I try to be clean. I try to be neat.
Yeah, I have the little what are the form-fitted keyboard protecting thing on them for the keyboard. Because I don't have a beverage handy and spill it on a keyboard from time to time. But when I draw, everything that can spill is gone.
Yeah. Nice. Right. See, but I kind of wish they made that like a scratch and sniff cover.
Yeah. That's coming.
Didn't someone do one that has been done?
I'm sure they.
There was actually there was a trend at some point. Some small company that was doing some, action adventure thing went out and shot every issue that they sent with bullets, and so you had actual bullet holes through it, and then other publishers got wind of that and wanted to jump on that bandwagon because, of course, and they had, printing people do carefully drilled holes at strategic places to just like, how can something like that become a trend? And yet it does.
Well, you remember when KISS went to the printing factory in Canada and cut their wrists and put their blood into the printer's ink?
Yes, I do. And when was it Tom DeFalco who created the Squadron Supreme? It wasn't Ralph. I got editors at Marvel, Tom DeFalco and Ralph Macchio.
Grunwald, right?
Grunwald, yes. When he passed away, he was dying of cancer, and so he arranged for, when they did the omnibus or whatever they were calling it at the time, collection of the Squadron Supreme stuff. He arranged for his printer's ink, so that a little bit of him is actually in every copy. Well, a fellow that I don't know if you met, but I'm sure Mike Baron has. Did you know Jack Herman at all, Mike?
Gee, that rings a bell. But
on the periphery of the comic scene back in the Chicago area.
Yeah, I think I did.
Well, he did Robotech too when you were doing Robotech.
That's right. That's right.
He came up with the plan, the scheme. He was a merry prankster that we were hitting Chicago area comic shops just as the big Squadron Supreme omnibus came out, and we were surreptitiously sprinkling pepper between some of the pages and then closing it back up so that when people open it and they hear, I heard his ashes were in it, you open in this, this fall of pepper. We didn't stick around. We were not brave enough to stick around to see if it worked at all. If anyone, got weirded out by it, but we did a few. Jack was, he would come up with some stuff and I was easily talked into things back then. So
this is why physical product will never go away.
Exactly.
You are right there. You're absolutely right. Anyway, good times.
So go ahead, Mike.
I remember a party in San Diego the first year I went. It was a hotel down on the bay that's no longer there. It may have been a Holiday Inn. And Dave Sim was throwing a party. Bill, did you know about this? Because the party was infamous.
Yeah.
There was a table in the center of the living room. He had a suite, and there was a pile of cocaine there, like something out of Scarface.
I heard about the. I never asked him if that was an actual.
I was there.
Oh, well then.
No, I'm not saying it's Dave's coke. Nobody knows whose coke it was.
Yeah.
But a number of people were helping themselves.
Well,
probably
if you're
Hunter
going
Biden's.
to throw a cocaine party, trying to keep it to yourself is kind of stingy. So,
especially when it's a mound. Something.
I've heard some pretty wild parties. I was at a few. There was one party DC threw on the rooftop of one of the buildings at San Diego, where for the first time they were allowing all their comic people and all their movie people to mix in one group. DC being DC, panicked and sent out a form letter to all the comic people on how we should conduct ourselves around these important movie people and all the things we should do and don't get fanboy and all that kind of stuff. I wish I still had that. I've tried to look it up many times, but at this party where proper conduct was the thing, DC had a bunch of naked dancers performing for the really disinterested, slightly embarrassed crowd because they were dressed up as little fairies and they had the minimum covering of the naughty bits, but basically essentially strippers. So, and the thing is, I mean, I crowd for so many years. If they needed advice on how to conduct yourself in a strip club, I could have told them a few things. Come on, DC. But there's been a few really weird and I missed the one Jill Thompson told me about where she walked in on a massive lesbian orgy at one point. Did she pick up the phone and call me down to the whatever room that was? No. So, yeah.
To preserve it in artistic memory.
Oh yeah. There somebody should write a book like that, but they wrote those books about Hollywood. What did they call
Hollywood.
those? At Babylon. Yeah.
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 Comic book Babylon.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's certainly enough material for it, but yeah, I don't know if anyone ever will. I mean, and some of the stuff, just I heard. Did you ever hear the Grant Morrison rumor about the white suit and the long plane ride?
Nope.
That's all I'm going to say, because that's all I can say without it getting so filthy. But I did have the bad taste once out to dinner with Grant and his lovely wife. They were being such convivial hosts. As a matter of fact, he just bought a castle in Scotland, way around again, and invited me up anytime I wanted. And now I always wait, I always consider the first invitation anywhere to be courtesy. And that second one, I never got the second invitation. But anyway, I asked him, Grant, since we're all a little tipsy and stuff like that, is the white suit story true? And he said, yep, every word of it, everything you've ever heard about it that you can't believe, it's absolutely true. If you get a chance, ask him. I won't be the one to tell you, or at least not on the air.
Well, now you can invite Grant to your little spot in Scotland now too.
Yes, welcome to the hospitality of my acres. Yeah.
So is there rounding back to public domain? Are there any characters that you haven't toyed with in the public domain that you would want to?
Oh, I'm certain there are. A lot of them, like, for example, Peter Pan was in the public domain and was destined to be the very first main villain in Fables, but then DC balked because even though they were in the public domain in America,
not
by
in England,
special act of British Parliament, they weren't yet in the public domain in England.
Yeah.
Because of the school that received all of the royalties.
Right.
So they didn't want to. I mean, they wanted to sell books in England, so they didn't want to have that closed, and also they didn't want to have the reputation of taking money away from these poor little orphans.
Right.
Which made sense to me. So I was unable to use that public domain character then, and eventually it has all gone public domain since, and so in the new Fables, Peter Pan appears. But a lot of the things that should be public domain, without all the fiddling with the back end of the law to kind of punt these decisions down the road endlessly. The Edgar Rice Burroughs characters. I mean,
yeah,
and you have to be very careful, because since not everything Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote has passed into public domain, the estate is very aggressive in putting a stop to anyone taking advantage of what is in the public domain. The one thing they can't really stop is just a direct reprinting of those books that are clearly in the public domain. But using the characters, it would be nice too.
I've written a Sherlock Holmes Captain Nemo graphic novel,
Yeah.
which Richard Mont is almost done illustrating, and we're going to offer that next year.
Excellent.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I just did this whole thing. It's actually for gaming, for a tabletop role-playing game, about how, speaking of Captain Nemo, that the island from the Jules Verne's The Mysterious Island, in which Captain Nemo plays an important part, and is the same island as Gilligan's Island, is the same island as Fantasy Island.
Oh, that's
the same
awesome.
island as the Lost Island that they're
Right.
and also Joe versus Volcano, whatever. A very complex way that shows that it's the same island every time. It brigadoons in and out of our world, which is why everyone thinks it keeps blowing up with its volcano all the time. But that's just the engine that drives it back and forth.
Do you know about Philip Jose Farmer's Wold universe?
Oh gosh, yes. And boy, I eat that stuff up.
Me too.
I just love it. There was a fan of adventure fiction that just proved how beloved all that stuff is to him, and my hat's off to him. Yeah, I love every bit of that.
And for people who don't know, Philip Jose Farmer created a universe that included Tarzan, Doc Savage, Mark Twain.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes, yeah. And he called it the Wold Universe. His books are fascinating, and I recommend them. I'm trying to think. The books he wrote about Doc Savage and Tarzan, he put out one of those ace double-back novels where you turn the book over and it's a completely different novel on the other side. But one was devoted to Doc Savage and the other was devoted to Tarzan. He didn't call them that, but they were instantly identifiable.
Right.
And he loved those characters, so he wrote about them a lot.
Yeah. You see, seems like he's about to say something.
Yeah, Bill, you're keeping us on tenterhooks.
Oh well, it keeps the thing
keeps freezing.
I know.
Freezing up.
Just slap it. Just slap it.
Yeah. He did also a novel called A Feats Tarzan.
A what?
And the doc called Caliban, or maybe even
Doc Caliban. Doc Caliban. That was Doc Savage.
Doc Caliban.
Yeah.
And I forget Tarzan's name, but
let's find it.
It was Doc Savage versus Tarzan, and boy, that final fight between the two of them. Oh my goodness. Wear your seatbelt if you read that one.
And Farmer wrote Tarzan Alive, a definitive biography of Lord Greystoke. Remember that?
Yeah.
Good book.
Yeah. But one of the things I liked is not the Wold Newton universe.
Wold Newton, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Not only did they all exist in the same fictional universe, but most of them were in some way related to each other.
That's right.
Descendants of, cousins of, etc.
Right.
Just delightful. A writer, Jess Nevins, Nevins, is a researcher, a professional researcher, librarian. He wrote, God, what would you call it? It's not the title, but a who's who of everyone in the Wold Newton universe, and an explanation of, and some of that esoteric stuff that, I mean, Farmer got so detailed that some of these characters just went over my head. So you could it was published by Monkey Brain Press, Chris Robertson's outfit. I don't know how many of those actually came out, so you'd have to work to find them. But Jess Nevins, Monkey Brain Press, I'm not sure what the title of. Yeah. And he also did a definitive Alan Moore's the
Swamp Thing or Watchmen?
No, the
V for Vendetta.
Extraordinary Gentleman thing.
Right. Yeah. Yep. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
League
Yep.
of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Memory. Um, yeah, but yeah. Anyway, not that we got off on a tangent there, but
No, well, those characters, all those great Victorian pulp characters, may they live forever. I'm dying to do more, you know.
yeah.
Bill, did you say that was for a game that's going to be coming out, the Island one?
Well, yes. Don't look for it anytime soon. I just ran it at a convention, based con, where all of these radical conservatives.
I think I'm going to be there next year, Bill.
You should. It was wonderful. There were none of the ugly incidents that are always happening at these conventions.
Yeah.
Every conversation was polite. It was just such a relaxing
Do you know who Gabe El-Taib is?
good time. But anyway, yeah. So now it's I've got to bundle all that stuff up and send it to Mark Finn, who's going to actually publish it as part of his gaming publishing stuff. But yeah.
Bill, do you know who Gabe El-Taib is?
Yeah. It's all about the fact that this magic trunk kept producing over 7 years of captivity, kept producing everything they need. And it turns out the mysterious island had a trunk full of stuff that Nemo gave them that had all the stuff they needed, the guns and stuff to keep them alive. And then, of course, in Joel versus Volcano, that trunk that kept him alive at key points. The island and the trunk are kind of linked, kind of like Sauron and the Ring. Whereas the trunk is magical and stuff. That's one of its byproducts. But its main thing is when the island drifts into the other dimension, this is the anchor it puts out so it can find its way back to our world from time to time. But you get a hold of that trunk. How is it Mr. Howell was a millionaire? Was he a big industrialist, like you said? No, he had all this money coming out of this trunk, which is why I ask you, why would any millionaire take a quickie cruise with other people and bring a trunk along for a 3-hour cruise? Because that particular trunk he doesn't let out of his sight, and there were nefarious agents all working for Mr. Rourke, who eventually takes it over in Fantasy Island. It's on a cruise that he was not scheduled for, to get away at the last moment. That's the whole story behind it. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, look for it someday. I'm tentatively calling it Island of Terror, or the Trunk of Doom. I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe I'll call it both.
Well, since you brought up that convention, I will say, and I did want to address this, I'm more of a centrist leaning right, but I really got disgusted, and I know it always happens, but at how much we'll have two things. I think Bill will this will be refreshing. I mean, he'll take it as a compliment. But one thing is, I hated seeing basically every writer and creator that I know of that's on the left immediately attacking and saying, we're not going to support Bill with this. And it's like where have all of the supposed liberals that are against big business and all these other things, and anti-war liberals and everything else? It's like they're very hard to find. But the other thing I did want to say before I forgot is most of the people that when I have talked with them about that, and we've been discussing that and just been like, it'd be nice if just artists and writers would just support artists and writers, just out of the principle that you're both in the same boat, no matter what your political beliefs are, religious beliefs or whatever. But I had most of the people I know and most of my friends were shocked to learn that your political views lean more conservatively because of what they read in Fables. And I was like, that's the sign of a good writer, because they don't put their views in every single character. every character has their own views.
Any reader that thinks that they can look at any book for what the writer believes, you're playing a pretty silly game.
Yeah.
There are ways to do that. To Kill a Mockingbird, The Grapes of Wrath, both those books and the movies made from them are highly entertaining because they understand that entertainment is job one of the industry that they're in, but they deliver a powerful social message without lecturing or beating you over the head. And that's because they've also internalized the most important rule of storytelling, which is show, don't tell.
Yes. But in each of those books, the right way to do it is you cannot look at any character in it that is this is the author, lecturing us, and all the rest are just made up characters.
Right.
Yeah. I often get asked, is there any Fables character that's an author insert? And I get accused of making Bigby Wolf an author insert, which is, I didn't eat many people whole in the first half of my life. I really didn't. So, if that's supposed to have been me, then I've been telling a lot of lies about myself. Yeah. It's a dangerous road to go down as far as thinking you can fully map out a character by character explanation of what the author believed. But you can do message fiction and do it well if you do in fact entertain.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's one of the things and that's one of the other people, which I don't know how they didn't get it from some of the stuff in Nexus. But one of the people that I knew, until a few years ago, a lot of them were surprised to find out that Mike's politics leaned that way. And it's like, yeah, because he writes characters and the characters have different beliefs and they have the conflict that drives the story. And it's like, because of their different beliefs, but it's to me, like, that's always, especially more and more in this day and age, it's always a sign of a good writer if you can put different beliefs in the different characters. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, it's the writer's point. It's the writer's job to imagine every point of view. And the more points of view you can imagine, the better writer you're going to be. And it's nobody's job to lay down markers and say, you can't write about this because you're the wrong whatever. It's the writer's job to imagine greatly, imagine anything he, she, or it wants. And that's where we get great speculative fiction.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare. Should Shakespeare have been allowed to write Othello? I mean, it's an absurd question, but there are people who ask it.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone, I'm forgetting his name, but someone in an interview said the purpose of art is not to tell your readers what to do, but to show your readers who they are. And to a great extent, I believe that. I mean, a lot of people that are making the most noise right now about here's what you shouldn't do and cultural appropriation and this and all that kind of stuff are just, you're just showing us who you are. You're not contributing to a reasonable discussion, and it's not helpful in any way other than you're revealing yourself.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I know we're getting near the end of our hour here, so I wanted to make sure that we let people know to go to billsartandstories.onlineweb.shop. There is a whole bunch of awesome stuff there And also, he is at
My
Bill
sketchbook, limited edition.
and that's where I was going to ask that if that was going to be up on the store.
Yep, you could, for lots of original art, all priced far too high because I don't really want to get rid of any of it. But sketchbooks, a couple of my novels. I wrote a children's book that Tor Books published called Down the Misterly River. Not a typo. It's old style boys adventure stuff that actually featured a Boy Scout as like the hero of the story just before the Boy Scouts of America sold us out and just decided that's it, we're going to finally yield to all the make themselves not recognizable as a wonderful institution anymore. In any case, Down the Misterly River, a novel called Hammer of the Gods, in which a modern day bastard half-breed son of a human and the queen of fairy, he throws his hammer and has to keep it out of everyone's hands as all the institutions of the world think that they would be the only one with the a dangerous weapon. There is Just Another Rancor, my novel of love letter to Edgar S. Burroughs and Heinlein about a modern day man goes to a world of elves and giants, etc., etc. But he goes with a modern day rifle company, so it's a little bit different than the standard portal adventure story. A smattering of reasonably priced artwork and just a boatload of stuff that's one sketch that should be about $20 for you to buy, but it's of a new character. It's my experiment. It's like it's the actual price is about $1,000 or so because you're also with that sketch to see. I'm trying many things, just to see what works.
And what's your handle on Twitter?
My handle on Twitter is at Bill
Willingham.
Willingham.
All one word. On my Twitter page, the link to my store. If you,
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, and please, I've got
this suspense is killing me.
Fire and Ice bound.
Yeah,
please consider buying it. Nothing to do with the Fire and Ice that DC rushed into print to come out on the
anniversary
on the same ship week. Nothing to do with that. The storylines do not cross over. And so far as we know, DC has not yet laid claim to the Frazetta Fire and Ice yet, but stay tuned. Apparently,
that's funny. Yes, and and I will let everybody know. I know everybody's feeds here have been kind of glitching. We don't know why. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. We're freezing up. People are know that we've had different glitching things. I will edit this, and I'll re-upload it to our YouTube. So so you get a better version.
Great.
So, yep. But but it's been fun. Still, the suspense is always killing, Mike.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I never know whether or not to start.